Hey, thanks for coming on short notice. We were trying to decide whether we wanted to hold a conference or just send out a press release, but I thought we had some pretty significant information to give out as it relates to evacuations, and there's some specific instructions which I felt this would be a better forum for that. And since we're already here, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for Rich Harvey, the incident commander, to just give a brief update on the successes of today's suppression efforts and so forth. So the other topic I wanted to cover is talk about the assessment that has been ongoing, the damage assessment. You know that a new update went out. I think it was around 2 o'clock today. We now have 3,338 residents that are standing. They're green, they're in good shape. The total reached 480 that are total losses, and then we have 17 that are partial losses. We expect another update to be pushed out right around 7 p.m. this evening, a little before or a little after. We don't expect dramatic change. Of course, I say that, and I think any number, as long as it increases on the total side, is pretty dramatic. But we're very near the end of the assessment. With the release of the evacuation zones, we think we have somewhere under 100 homes to assess, and that is our first formal sweep, and then we will begin a second review process. Circumstances are still changing as we identify homes and change addresses, so I want the public to know that there still is a chance of some minor changes, but we feel like we're pretty close on that front. Earlier today, I talked about 14 properties that had not been assessed that also were consistent and cross-referenced with individuals who said they were not going to evacuate. The good news is that all but one of those were green, meaning they received no damage. So that made me feel much better as far as a fear that we could have more missing persons that just haven't been reported. That left us down to one. We have a team on site and not only checking that residence, but also out trying to locate the individuals that own that property. So that was some good news on my behalf. I was afraid and very concerned that we may be trying to locate 14 groups of people, anywhere from individuals to families, and that worked out to our favor. So what I'll talk about now is the evacuation zone. It's going from mandatory to pre-evacuation. Obviously in pre-evacuation, if people don't want to come back, they don't have to come back, but we're kind of reversing the order that went from pre-evac to mandatory and reversing that back down. Essentially, is what we're trying to do is open up more of the properties and residents off County Line Road south. So if you follow Meridian as our eastern boundary, that will stay intact and secured. Meridian Road will continue to remain closed. If you go north of Meridian up to Walker, we will open everything from Walker north all the way across to Black Forest. Then Black Forest will drop south to Hodgen. Then Hodgen east, or west, I'm sorry, to 83. So that opens up all that northern area. Now, is what I want residents to think about is we have a lot of interior road closures, so they will need to access some of those properties from County Line Road. Now, some of them may not have full utility service. That's something they're going to have to look at and decide if they want to stay, but at least it gives them an opportunity to go in and check their property and come and go as they please. There's a couple little enclaves that we made some exceptions to. If you look at the map over my shoulder, and I'll point this out here in a few minutes with all of the newly opened areas, from McCoon Road along Meridian at a diagonal up to Walker Road, there's some driveway accessible properties off Meridian that go west. If it's north of McCoon on up to Walker and they have a driveway coming off Meridian to the west, we will allow those folks to return to their homes as well. And then over on Walker or Hodgen, where it drops to the south, we're going to include the High Forest Ranch subdivision. So there's no real boundaries other than off 83, encompassing all of High Forest, moving to the east, and really drawing a line up through open land and connecting to Hodgen. All of the people accessing that newly opened area will need to access it from Baptist Road, coming off from the west to the east, or 105 and using the northern part of 83 to access those properties. We're going to keep 83 closed for a little while longer to allow the flow of traffic of people coming in so we don't create a hazard to those people trying to come home with traffic. And then when our deputies feel it's safe, they're going to go ahead and open both lanes of traffic on 83. So we estimate that happening maybe around 8:30, 9 o'clock. We can get the flow of traffic back on 83 moving north and south. We will be opening those areas up at 8 p.m. So there's no rush for people to get up there. They'll be sitting and waiting. We want to give the firefighters that are in that area time to pack up, mop up a few more areas, and move their equipment out so they're not fighting a volume of traffic. They asked us to give them till 8 p.m. We're pressing it a little bit. They were willing to give us this flexibility, so we as a community need to honor their request, let them get their equipment out of there, and then the citizens in those areas can start coming back in. The biggest thing we need to watch for is the traffic flow and make sure it's done in a safe fashion. So I'll point out the map and then I'll turn it over to Rich Harvey for a little update on the fire. This is the line I talked about with Maketa Road on up to Walker. We kind of cut an angle, come across Walker where it jogs. Walker Road will remain closed, so people will have to access from the north if possible. Some of those they can't, they're just going to have to wait. We'll drop down Black Forest, and then we'll come across Hodgen, and this is that line that was drawn in just for this neighborhood here. Again, they'll need to access it from here and up here on 105 and drop south on 83. This is an old infrared map, so I don't want you to think we're sending people home where there's active fire. We talked to the division chief, I think is his title, and they've been up there all day prepping it, working on it. Again, there could be utility issues up in here, up in some of these areas here, and maybe over in here, but we'll let the homeowners decide whether they're willing to live with that inconvenience. So hopefully that answers the questions. Every day we're assessing where we can open up more areas, and we'll be looking at more updates tomorrow and assessing it based on the risk and the safety to the citizens. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Incident Commander Rich Harvey.
Thanks, Terry. Good evening, Rich Harvey, Incident Commander with the Black Forest Fire. Obviously we had a pretty good day out there today, and I think Terry was just sharing with you some of the results of our efforts. This morning when I talked to you guys, we talked about those two rabbit ears over there on the left and how they were a big focus of our efforts. And the guys out there on the ground were very successful. And this afternoon, Terry and I talked with our operations section chief and Brian Bunn, who's the division supervisor up there. We felt comfortable. We had a good enough handle on it, good enough handle on the mop up. We could start allowing people back in on that end. And we do appreciate the 8 o'clock. We got to get our folks out of there, and that would be really nice. We did make good progress all around the fire today, and we hope to have, or we will have, the same amount of personnel back out there tomorrow working and a full night shift tonight. The only change for tomorrow that you'll see is we'll probably be releasing a few of the helicopters. They're very expensive toys to keep around, and the guys did not use them much today. That's a good thing. They didn't use them because they didn't need them. And that's part of the reason that I'm able to report that we're upping the containment percentage on this fire from 40% to 55%. And I'm not going to draw the black lines out there, but the progress was pretty much consistent all the way around the fire. No growth, no loss of anything except for smokes. We've been nailing smokes, any flare-ups that we see, and they're getting further and farther between. Tomorrow, we'll also start to implement our strategy that I mentioned this morning about the gridding. Teams going out from the base of every structure, from the perimeter of every fire control line, and starting to take out all those hot spots. The first of what we hope to be 3 waves to clear that area completely and get people back inside to some of the other areas. As the sheriff mentioned, we are working very closely together to make sure that the best fire information and our concerns are shared with him, and he's working diligently on his part to try and make as much available as we're comfortable with. And it's been a great partnership. Firefighters had a good day out there. 55% still not done, so we're going to keep working at it. Thank you.
Since Rich Harvey talked about that grid work they're talking about, that's actually people walking back and forth on a grid, checking the properties, looking for hot spots. It's that process, which you can imagine is very, very tedious, that will initially open the door for us to start letting citizens in to see their own properties. To give you an idea for those firefighters, to not only walk it once, but walk it another direction twice, and possibly a third time before we can declare it safe, to even let people look at their own property is what we're waiting on and coordinating that effort with them. So we're still a few days out. As you know, a lot of the community members that may have lost their property or their property was saved, they want to see it. We are working diligently to see what we can do to start bringing them in small groups. There was a lot of questions about placards and where they can get them to get access. It's going to be a long time before there is free access in there. Now, I say a long time, it could be several days, it could be weeks before there's absolute free access. We are working on a plan to do controlled access once that grid process is complete, section by section, and as they complete one section, then we'll see what we can do to coordinate another, so long as that effort does not interfere with the firefighting efforts, the grid efforts, or the secondary assessment, which will begin tomorrow, re-verifying those addresses and so forth. So again, thank you for coming out on short notice. I thought we had some good news with some details to give out, and we'll just stand by and look forward to tomorrow's 12 o'clock update. As he just stated, it was 55%, so we're making significant gains each day, I think, and I don't see that changing for tomorrow. 55% containment.
Sheriff, on the one house that the people that didn't evacuate, the others you said were green on that house, is it green, or have you been able to go in there yet?
That house was one that we had listed as a total loss, and we have folks on hand checking that out, as well as what we find out in a lot of these, and let's hope this is the case. They left, and we just have to find where they are. But the good news is we narrowed it from a risk of 14 down to 1, so I felt that was very encouraging, especially for the destructiveness of this fire, the speed at which it moved. I'll tell you, I feel very thankful we didn't have a greater loss of life.
Could we ask Rich about the impact of the weather today and what he's seeing for the next day or two?
Absolutely.
So the question was the impact of the weather for today and kind of our forecast for the next couple days. At least for the next couple days, what you see is what's in the forecast. Afternoon thunderstorms and fairly warm and windy conditions. Today, how to help this? As I alluded to this morning, we like a little bit of sunshine and we like a little bit of wind out there right now. I know that sounds funny for a firefighter to say that, but the reason is we're on search and destroy missions for smokes, and this helps us find them. It crops them up so we can get them. The faster we can find them and feel confident that there is nothing out there that can rekindle and pose a threat to either properties on the interior or exterior, the quicker we can get you back in there. So a little bit, fine line here, a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of wind's a good thing. We don't want big doses. As you look further into next week, the precipitation likelihood increases slightly. So we think we're in a good position, not only with where the firefighters and the efforts have put us, but the weather is not creating those super dangerous conditions, and hopefully they're just a smidgen helpful, but we're going to keep an eye on it the same.
With you releasing helicopters or another aircraft, how far away will they be, or does it depend?
They won't disappear completely. Some of the ones that are releasing are the National Guard. We know the phone numbers for those guys. They're going to be on ready reserve for us to come back if we need them. But again, what I'll say is we don't release resources that we need. So we're only releasing resources that are superfluous to our needs. They're above and beyond what we need. And so we will keep them available. We'll know where they're at. And we can get them back quickly on a short leash, but to keep them here when they're not flying just doesn't make sense.
How's the nationwide picture look right now for those types of resources?
I haven't even checked. I'm focused on this fire.
Sheriff, I was wondering if you could give us any kind of estimation on how many families, how many people you expect to
You know, I didn't get that information. I am guessing based on the numbers that we were working with, it's somewhere between 14 and 1,500 households. 14 to 1,500 households.
Are you any closer to releasing the identities of the two people who lost their lives in the fire?
No. No, the question was, are you any closer to releasing the identity? I know that keeps coming up. I'll see if I can't find out from our coroner, Dr. Bucks, what the status is of that. I know on that type of identification, it usually takes a little longer, and if the forensic experts that do that sort of work are on vacation or out of town, that could be the delay. So I would guess if they're in town, everything's moving along, we should hear something Sunday or Monday. But all it takes is they're off somewhere else doing some work and there's some delays. No updates on the cause at this point. Of course, that's part of the investigation, and once we make that determination, it'll certainly be newsworthy to at least announce that phase. But they are working on it. We are still taking tips in. I was told that this afternoon, I think we had 6 additional tips come in, and of course, it's up to our detectives and investigators to evaluate those and really just determine the value of them.
Sheriff, there's a process in place right now where you're allowing some homeowners to return to their home for vital needs like medication or pets left behind. Do you see that continuing tomorrow as well?
You know, we're working with citizens that really have no other options. The last thing we need is a couple thousand people showing up at roadblocks. We have had people running them in under rare circumstances. Medications is one. If it's a if it's a pet issue, we've been working with the Humane Society. The best thing you can do is contact our Joint Information Center, the EOC, and let us know what's going on. We could put it on a list, but the last thing we need is a couple hundred people showing up at the checkpoints, and really they're wasting their time. Let's get the phone work done ahead of time, make the appointment. Everybody has a need to get in. We don't have the resources. If I were to tie up all our resources to take everybody in for their need, I could see delaying our plans by a month.